I'm sorry, after what meeting?
Our last
The
meeting.
last meeting.
And that's another thing to consider is what you can intervene with and what steps you can take as citizens and, what steps, when you can't lay hand. If somebody were to stand up in the congregation and just start causing a ruckus, just yelling, talking loudly or whatever, what as citizens can you do? You can encourage him, but there's points where you can put your hands on people and then there's other points where you can't. And so it's good to be knowledgeable of that, because if you put your hands on somebody, you could be arrested for assault, If they're a threat to the congregation, if they're doing something where violence is imminent, then the steps you can take to handle that situation is different. But if somebody's just causing a ruckus, and I think about that all the time, what if somebody just stands up and starts, for whatever reason, they're maybe having a mental break, or maybe they're an atheist who's just trying to make a point. What as a church can you do for that situation? And sometimes it's difficult other than calling 911 and getting somebody in authority there to handle the situation. It's just things to think about. So I'll go through this presentation. I'm going to apologize right off the bat. I just got trained in this and it's the first time I've ever given it. So there's a lot of information. I'm going to read some of it. So
We'll make it tough on you.
So I don't like to read. I like to, be knowledgeable about it, but there's just so much information that I don't really want to mess anything up. So, CRAES, civilian response to active shooter events. It's what we're kind of going to now to teach it to civilians. Some of the material in here is dark. There's a lot of talk about events that have actually happened. They're going to touch on the Virginia Tech shooting, things like that. So it is, there's not like graphic images, but some of the content is a little disturbing. Sadly, that's the world that we live in right now. So I'm Trooper Mark McCauley. We were talking a little earlier. I've been out of the Houghton Lake Post for 12 years. My entire time with the state police. Before this, I was a journeyman electrician, so I got some life experience and then decided to take a different course and join the state police, and was lucky enough to get assigned to Houghton Lake. Been there all 12 years. I'm born and raised in West Branch, so came here mainly to go to Spicer's. And so, but familiar with the area, and I love the area, and this is home to me. So active shooter events, active attack events, we're going to just check into some of the research and some of the situation that goes along with it. Hi. So what would you guys say is an active attack event? What do you think would that entail?
I would assume some heroin.
Right.
Somebody brandished a gun. Or no.
So is
Just
it,
as low as a fist.
right?
Any kind of a weapon bears.
Right. How many does it involve 10 people? Does it involve one person? When you hear this, do you think of numerous people, or do you just think of a single person being targeted?
I usually think of a single person, but it certainly could be many. So.
Right. So the federal definition of an active shooter event is one or more people actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined or populated area. And then there's a bunch of caveats like not gang related, not the byproduct of another crime, things like that. So solely an active attack event is where somebody is coming into a population to do harm to those people there. It's not really a domestic violence situation because that has its own standard. Even though some of those might be used to juice the stats a little bit. I don't know how the feds do that all, but so another way to think of active attack event is attempted mass murder. It is useful to think of them as attempted mass murders with a firearm. Notice there is no requirement that a certain number of people be shot or killed. Many of the events in the data that we will have, few people shot. Some have no one shot. So it doesn't mean that people die. It is any attempt to take life, to hurt people.
You're talking about just pointing it at someone too,
Mm-hmm.
without shooting.
Right. Yep. So the data we're going to discuss comes from the 2014 FBI report titled "A Study of Active Shooter Incidents from 2000 to 2013." The data in this presentation has been updated to include 2014 events. So it is a little, and that's the problem with some of this data, is there's a lag time from when it actually happens till now. I mean, if you're thinking about 2014, that's 10 years ago. But this is the most current information that we have. So it just shows, obviously when you have attempted mass murder, active attack event, come on. You have the attacker. Now there's no real profile for an attacker. They range in age from young to senior citizens. Most of them are males, but some have been females, and they come from all races. They have the Avenger mindset. That's deliberate, it's focused, it's detached from reality. A lot of them have been bullied in the past, and many kill themselves when confronted by the police. Some announce that their intentions by posting on social media, talking to friends, and other methods. So that's the point where most of these can be stopped, is they'll share something to a person or they'll put something on social media. And when that person or somebody sees that, that's the time to get involved and say, this isn't right. We need to have this looked at. But a lot of people blow it off as, oh, they're just seeking attention, or they're just blowing off steam, things like that. But in this day and age, it's to a point where if somebody is saying things like that, it's got to be taken seriously. We're going to skip over the next one. It's just kind of for a larger group and things like that. So risk factors. Awareness and prevention, like we talked about, is the key to successful intervention of an individual before they become an active shooter. There are certain risk factors that exist in individuals that may have a propensity for violence. This list are risk factors of concern when evaluating a potential threat. Is there a history of violence? Have they been exposed to violence? Domestic violence is often, or bullying is often in the backstory of a lot of these people. Substance abuse and dependency, mental illness. I think if we truly looked into a lot of these, there would be some mental illness with, I would say, most of them. And then a history of suicidality. Have they talked about, have they considered suicide in the past? If they have, and they don't feel they have anything to live for, what's their next steps going to be then? Are they just going to hurt themselves, or with the other history in their lives, are they going to look to impact others and kind of get even with the world when they do? So, all of these should be looked at, but anybody who's tried to talk to somebody who's going to go into a situation, they're kind of it's hard to talk to them, hard to make, actually gain ground with them. So sometimes seeking assistance from an expert is good, but I've talked with a lot of people in this job who said, I've tried, all they want to do is put me on pills. They don't have enough time for me. So I'm done with them, and I've actually heard that from numerous people who said they just don't make time. All they want to do is stick you on pills. So I'm done trying to seek help for it. So it's kind of sad reality of the world we live in is there's so much need and just not enough staffing and not enough financial resources out there for that staffing. So other risk factors, have they just displayed stalking, harassing, or threatening behavior? What is their family dynamics like, their support system? Isolation and instability. Are they loners? Do they keep to themselves? Are they able to care for themselves properly? And then what do others think? Are others concerned about their behavior, or is this just something that you alone, see or think that there's something off? If there's numerous people who think, "Ew, this guy is kind of concerning," then it's maybe something to at least keep on your radar of what's going on. So this is an ACT map of all the incidents out there, the mass incidents. The yellow dots are with a gun. Red is knife and blue is car. So you can see at the very beginning in 2010, most of these are with guns. And then knives come into play, and then later on cars will be used. And the bigger the dots is 4+ people, and then the small dots is less than 4. So between that time frame, there were 567 events where this happened. And most of them, there's no real common hotspot. There's a lot of dots spread all over the place. A lot in California, Pennsylvania, New York, California. We have some, but it's down across lower Michigan, Detroit, Kalamazoo, that area, Muskegon. So the only real area that's not really touched is the Midwest, or I don't think that'd be called the Midwest, the Great Plains, just because the population is so less. Most of these are centered around large urban centers where there's more people. It doesn't mean that it can't happen in anywhere. I think Uvalde, Texas was just a small area. It wasn't a highly populated area. So how do I say this? What type of location do you think is the most attacked? What would you say most events happen at?
Gun-free zones.
Gun-free zones? Okay. You think schools? Schools are the one you hear about the most. What about like churches?
Well, that's on the rise.
Right. So actually the most events, did you change? You didn't change. Come on. Happen at businesses. Coworker to coworker. You hear about UPS, US Mail is one that's been around for years. But businesses have the most attacks committed. And then outdoors, school, and then other, which I believe churches would probably fall into other. So even though you hear most about schools, there's still only about 13-14% of the active shooters actually happen at schools. So how many businesses have you actually heard about have mass shootings? So there's a lot going on that don't get reported. And then a lot of the outdoor events are parades. That's when those vehicle attacks come in. Central Park, somebody driving down the street and hitting people, things like that is what outdoors is referring to. There was the concert in Vegas where the guy, shot and killed a bunch of people. I believe they would consider that outdoors as well. So actually, most of the attacks, the mass casualty attacks, happen at business locations. So connection to that venue, most of the events, 64%, the attacker has no connection to that business, to that it's a crime of opportunity. There's not really a direct relationship between the shooter and an employee or employer, or he was a student or former student. They're just crimes of opportunity. So 36% have no connection or have a connection to that location. So the quote by George, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. So we're going to take a look at some of the research into active shooter events themselves. So UC Santa Barbara, California in 2014, an example of pure evil at its best. The perpetrator killed 3 people independently by stabbing them at his residence, then eventually proceeded to attack people with a gun on campus and drive a car over others in the street. This is a prime example of why we have changed from calling these active shooter events to active attack events. This was a multi-pronged, multi-weaponed attack, and this is an emerging trend also, that there may be domestic violence and then going out and doing harm somewhere else. So the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida in 2016. The Pulse nightclub attack, an Islamic-inspired terrorist attacked and killed 49 people. The shooter was connected to the nightclub in that he frequented the business as a patron. So this is one example of where he was actually connected to the event. And 49 people were killed in that attack. So Las Vegas, Nevada, an individual attacked concertgoers from an elevated position at the Mandalay Bay Hotel, killing 59, making this the highest active shooter mass casualty incident since 9/11 in the U.S. Since they were in an open air environment, they couldn't get away from the bullets, and they couldn't really seek cover from the angle that he was shooting at. So this is a good example of the avoid, deny, defend model. A lot of people were in just an open air, free range, nothing to stop. There wasn't really anywhere they could go. So they tried to get out of there, tried to seek cover, and just by the time they even realized what was happening, it was just like a stampede, and it was just a prime place for this to happen. So if you can, the best way is to get out of the area and not make yourself a target. Then you have 2017 in New York City. One lone person driving a truck killed 8 people and wounded 15 using a Home Depot rental truck. If I remember right, this was Valentine's Day, and he began by driving through the pathways of Central Park, just hitting people as he went. So that was just one person with a rental truck. 2017, Sutherland Springs, Texas. One lone gunman killed 26, wounded 20 more. He was a dishonorably discharged Air Force veteran. The shooting began exterior of the church, and he was shooting into it. The attacker then moved into the church. Luckily, there was a witness there, retrieved their own weapon, and began taking the fight to the suspect, forcing him to flee. So I believe this was a witness from a nearby home who heard the shooting, saw the shooting outside, retrieved his firearm, and chased that, took the fight to him. So the number of deaths that happen have a couple things that go into it. How quickly the police arrive, and also target availability. We train. So when we get a call as a police officer that there is an active shooter, hopefully we never get that call. But our main goal is to get on scene and put down that threat. So if there was a shooting here, we would come in, and if there were people on the ground, it might be cold, but we are going past those people, because until we put down the threat, more people are going to be hurt or died or killed. So when law enforcement comes in, they're not seeking to render aid. They're looking to get rid of the threat. to stop the killing, basically. So after that threat's done, there'll be a building search, and also first aid will be rendered to people, but it can look a little callous when we arrive on scene and you're stepping over people, or people will be begging for help. And if it ever happens, there's going to be a very elevated situation. So they're probably might not be the nicest people to deal with in the world, because they're focused on stopping that threat. So stuff just to keep in mind. Hopefully it never ever happens, but our job is to show up and eliminate the threat first. So in that time, target availability and how long it takes to arrive, more people that the person has, the more they in that spot, the more that they can hurt or kill in that situation. So the average response time for law enforcement to an event is 3 minutes. So it obviously depends on location. Here, not always, but there's a good chance that somebody's at the state police post. So if it was here, there'd be a quick time. Denton Township is awfully out and about, and the sheriff is around. So here, I would expect a fairly quick response time. But there was the North Shore Lounge up on the lake was broken into. The closest person was one of my sergeants who was over on 75. So it took about 20 minutes for him to get there to the North Shore Lounge for that break-in and entering. That's a lot of time, especially if it was a serious situation with an active shooter. You know, there's no easy roads to get to that end of the lake, so you have to come down and around. So luckily we're on 55 here. It would be a little quicker, but having a security team, having protocols in place for something like that, it could make a huge difference. I don't ever tell a church, because there's a lot of churches that, God will protect us and we trust in God and He will keep us safe. That's what we all should be focused on, but it doesn't always work out that way. And sometimes His plan is outside of the box. So I like the idea of having security teams. So that although 3 minutes is a great response time statistically, that number can vary based upon a number of things such as traffic, other attacks, not being able to get into a location, locked doors. If the incident start time is X and law enforcement's response time is Y, people need to own everything in between that time. Basically, if you give people the false sense of security of 3 minutes, they will only train for 3 minutes and nothing longer. So that 3 minutes is considered fast and law enforcement response time. We can do things like better training, getting dispatch on board and training with dispatch, getting them to dispatch the information faster so that we get there soon. All that would speed up response time, but it's going to take time.
Yeah, not so much with police, but with fire. You hear about times where people have something going on to get them away from the area, and then they go and cause trouble.
Right, yeah. A prime example was there was a bank in Rose City that was robbed. That's got to be probably 10 years ago now, maybe not that long. He phoned in bomb threats. He phoned into most of the schools here in Houghton Lake, West Branch schools. He pretty much called in threats all over the area so that it would draw law enforcement away from Rose City to those schools. I was working that day, and it was a little weird because Charlton Heston and Houghton Lake and Roscommon all got bomb threats in one day. That's not normal. So we were kind of on guard that something else was going on, and it turned out he was robbing a bank in Rose City. So, but think about the attacks we already talked about, where the guy, killed somebody at his house, then rented a truck and drove and killed people with that truck. And I think there was a third element, if I remember right. But you're responding to the house, and then there's a situation where he's stabbed people, and then, he's driving through. So there's different, you're divided. So if it's something like that where he kills somebody at home and we get the call and we go there, and then he comes here, those resources are already tied up, especially if they're like on the other side of the lake. So we do our best, but it's sometimes can be delayed. So having people here who can act could be the difference in making that situation, you know. So we're going to go into some science about how people respond when a disaster happens. So there's 3 stages that people go through. So there's the denial stage, there's deliberation, and then there's decisive moment. A lot of this information comes from Amanda Ripley. She has a book, The Unthinkable: Who Survives When Disaster Strikes and Why. She did research examining who survives and who dies during disasters. She identified a 3-phase process that everyone goes through during these events. People who survive go through this process faster and take better actions at decisive moments because they had prepared beforehand. So she's a big advocate in practicing, even just mentally rehearsing what would happen if somebody came into this room. What would I do? How would I defend myself? How do I get others out? Just things like that. The Unthinkable: Who Survives When Disaster Strikes and Why? Yep. So denial. Many people do not admit that there's a disaster, or they understand the severity of the disaster. People delay taking action, and this delay costs lives. So somebody comes in and fires off a gun as you're sitting in the chair, you think, oh, a door just slammed, or a book just fell, or that can't be a gunshot. Why would there be a gunshot here? That's what that denial phase is, that coming to grips that was a gunshot, or what that noise was. So in the World Trade Center, people called others to check with them, logged off their computers, and packed up their things before they evacuated. That was part of that denial stage of, well, nothing serious is going on. I don't know if this goes into it, but there was actually a guy who was head of security for one of the corporations there, and he was there when the first World Trade Center was attacked, when the first time it was attacked, and he, since they didn't achieve the results, he suspected that there was going to be a second attempt somehow. So he practiced and practiced and practiced, had fire drills, to the point where his bosses were like, this is kind of crazy. Why are we doing this? You're wasting company time. Well, when the actual event happened, he was able to get all his people out. So all his employees got out, but he perished because he went back in to make sure everybody was out. So then,
The first one from 93, was that in 93?
yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So he suspected that a second attack would be coming. So he actually prepared his people.
A lot of people kind of thought he was crazy too.
Yes. Yeah. They thought he was just,
Over the top.
controlling or just crazy or whatever. But so then denial is the first step. So why do people do it? It's a process called normalcy bias. The brain is lazy. It wants things to fit into existing plans. It tries to define a disaster as something else that we are already familiar with. For example, in active shooter attacks, many people describe hearing the shots but attributing it to fireworks. This is because the brain is more easily able to process someone shooting off fireworks than someone shooting or murdering people. So the brain kind of does what's normal to it. That's a door slamming, that's a book dropping, that can't be gunshots. There's also a concept called social proof. We are social animals. We look to each other for clues about how to behave. This is especially the case when a situation is new and ambiguous. Consider any time you might have been at a large formal dinner party. There are many different plates, glasses, and silverware for each person. If you are unsure about which utensil to use, a very easy way to determine the appropriate response is to watch others around you to see what they are using, and then do the same. This is important because a few people doing the right thing can save many. So, if people are responding and leaving an area, people will tend to follow them, and they will get the hint that something is going on. If everybody's just sitting there looking around, well, then they sit there and look around.
That's an example of community college. Build them all in that class. They used to talk to them
Mhm.
for a while, but we're so nice
Mhm.
that nobody wanted to try to do anything. Now we don't go book or anything.
Right, right.
But they stood there because it was,
Well, if I talk to him, if I'm nice to him, he won't hurt me.
yeah, and I think the instructor was trying that.
Right. So social proofing is also linked to diffusion of responsibility. In novel or ambiguous situations, we look to others for information on how to act. If others are doing nothing, we will tend to do nothing. If others are acting, we tend to act. We kind of just talked about that. But this is the transition to deliberation. Many deny, but some see it and start to realize the problem, but you don't know what to do. So the next stage is deliberation, and the quicker you can get, oh, apparently there's a video here. Can you hear that? Where's the sound on this thing? Oh, on the side maybe?
Fusion of responsibility.
Sorry about that.
Liverpool Street Station in London, a busy thoroughfare for commuters. Unknown to these passersby, Peter is an actor. As part of an experiment on bystander apathy, he's pretending to be ill. How long before he gets help?
In London?
Yeah. Yep.
Helping would be inconvenient or even risky. He lies there for more than 20 minutes and no one raises an eyebrow.
It's always very distressing to watch situations like this where people are obviously suffering and no one's actually helping them. But what we have here is two conflicting rules. One is the rule we ought to help, and the other is the rule that we ought to do what everybody else is doing. And here you have effectively a group of strangers who are exerting the pressure not to intervene, not to help. And it's very difficult to rebel.
Ruth, another actor, takes Peter's place. How long before she receives help? Four minutes later, and 34 people have passed without stopping.
You don't really want to know. Listen, got the time. Well, they have got the time, they just don't want to get involved.
Unwittingly, these strangers have silently formed a temporary group with a rule: don't get involved. They're afraid to stand out from the crowd and won't take action if no one else does. This woman has clearly spotted Ruth, but she conforms to the rule and does nothing. Watch what happens, though, when someone else helps.
You alright?
Yes, thank you.
Sure, you look a bit sleepy, you alright?
She suddenly finds herself in a different group with a new rule: to help.
Well, shut up, you alright, yeah? Sure.
First I thought she was dead, then I checked to see if she was breathing or not. And I looked around and I couldn't believe that no one had noticed her because there was a bird sat there just absorbed reading the newspaper.
This time, Peter's dressed as a respectable gentleman. Now that his dress is in keeping with those around him, how long before he's rescued?
Hi, sir. How are you today?
6 seconds. She even calls him sir, and suddenly everyone's a good Samaritan.
Do you suffer from epilepsy?
No.
Why do you mind on the floor in the rain?
Because he's part of the right group. Everyone wants to help.
I would just hate to be in his position of feeling ill and nobody helping him walking past, so just like to check that he was okay.
That dog is wet, so you must really be ill because you can ruin the suit anyway.
So in that situation, there was two people, one a male, one a female. They didn't fit in, so they were pretty much ignored. The female had a quicker response time, one with the male, but it was still quite a long time. The male in the business suit, who looked like everybody else, people responded quite quickly to him. I kind of am curious of the person, the first lady who intervened. Did she come along and notice him because he fit in, or was she just that type of person who sees and helps people? If she would have came along during that one of those first situations, would she have stopped to help those people? So there can be some flaws in this, but it just kind of shows that there was a lot of people who ignored the first two, and then there was a lot of people who helped out the third because he fit in, the others didn't. So that kind of goes into that social proofing that we're more like to act when we're familiar with the situation or it's something that actually fits into our reality. So.
Yeah, that's a hard one, because, makes me think of
Mm-hmm.
and you wanna
And
go for the help, but,
Right.
you know, what do you do, you know?
And especially if you live in Chicago and you're used to that on a daily basis, it becomes part of your life where I can't give every day to these people, so they kind of just become part of the situation, part of the scenery around you, you know. Whereas a guest, a visitor, sees that and thinks, "Oh, that person needs help," and is not more likely, but they'll stop and help out or do something. And that's why people are always on the corners at busy intersections on busy travel days, because people out of state or who aren't familiar with that area don't know these people and see them. You trust on the kindness and generosity of strangers, and they're kind of in a way preying on that, but also seeking help from them. So every situation is different.
You've got the same thing with with like Narcan and stuff. You have one person that's going to say, "Well, that guy's a druggie anyway. Who cares what happens to him?"
Mm-hmm.
And then the next person, it's like, "Well, that's somebody's dad, somebody's brother, somebody's uncle,
Right.
Daughter, and
Yep.
everybody deserves a second chance, I think."
Yeah. So everybody's past experiences, their past life, what they've been through and what they've seen, and their biases that they have built kind of go into those decisions of who deserves help and who doesn't. How quickly do I help? Who is going to help them? Well, I can point them to somebody who can help them, but I'm not going to do it. Or, I lost somebody I love to overdose, so I'm going to help out as soon as I see that. Life is not a one-way street and one easy situation that everybody goes through. Everybody has experiences and reacts different based on what they have experienced in life. So that's the denial phase, which is the first phase of the kind of that process. The next is deliberation. Once people get past denial, they enter the deliberation phase. They understand something bad is happening, and now they must decide what to do. This is a problem because their brain is not functioning well because of the effect stress has on the body. Additionally, this is where fear enters the equation, because people know now this is a potential life or death situation. So she says that the human brain is kind of composed of two components. It has the human brain, which is reflective. It's the thinking brain. It's flexible. It's rational. It usually is a slow process when you think through something. You have to think about it to come to a conclusion. But then we also have the lizard brain, which is the part of your brain that kind of gets activated when stress is involved. It's reflexive instead of reflective. It's the reacting brain. It's fixed, emotional. it's fast and it just happens. A lot of times people can't really understand why they act in a certain situation, but it's that lizard brain taking over and kind of telling them what to do before they even realize that they're doing it. So it goes into that whole fight, flight, or freeze kind of mentality. Everybody handles it differently. Some, as soon as something happens, take it off and run. Others will stand and fight. Others don't know what to do and kind of just are frozen. There's also a stress response where, so imagine a scenario where you're home alone. You first hear a noise, and so you kind of go into condition white of, well, that's an odd noise. You know, something happened. Well, maybe I'm just making it up, or maybe just the normal house settling noises. And then you hear the noise again, and it's like, oh, that was the same noise from the same area. So you get a little more elevated, your heart rate goes up, and you start thinking, that is a little odd. Then you hear a screen door sliding and glass breaking on the door, and you go to red and then white. And then you get this last area where it's condition black. It's kind of system overload, freezing. It's where people have accidents. They're voiding of their bowels and bladder. So the condition white is a normal resting heart rate. Yellow is where your fine motor skills start to deteriorate. Red, complex motor skills deteriorate, but peak physical performance and gross motor skills. You are stronger, faster, and will bleed less when you're in condition red. Condition gray, cognitive processing deteriorates, tunnel vision, auditory exclusion, and time dilation. And the dilation. And then in condition black, system overload, freezing, voiding of bowels and bladder. So kind of as you progress through the stress, you don't want to go past it, color red, because that's when you aren't able to think and you tend to freeze up and you're kind of emotionally overwhelmed by the situation. Yes, yeah. In a perfect world, under perfect situations, when your heart rate gets to about 120 beats per minute, you should, that's when you're most able to act. And that's when your adrenaline is at its finest, and you will be able to handle the situation best. But a lot of times people go past that, and then it actually starts to negatively affect them. So I believe this is a video. I don't think there's sound to it, but focus on the lady right here with her child. Like, how many times has she put that baby in and out of that stroller? It doesn't look like the youngin is a brand new baby. She's put him in that stroller quite a few times, but because of the stress of the situation, because of what's going on, she can't manipulate those straps. Her body is just telling her, I need to leave, I need to leave, I need to leave. And her gross motor skills have completely gone. And she takes that long to get him out of that stroller.
Is that regular speed?
Yeah.
Still 4 seconds.
Right. So notice the length of time it takes the female with the stroller to remove the child from it. She never properly removes the child. However, she does achieve the goal through brute force. It takes her 10 seconds to remove the child, a task that she has done dozens of times daily. However, under stress, she is incapable of performing this task in a timely manner. In these incidents, 10 seconds can be a lifetime with a focused, aggressive attacker, no matter the weapon system in use. Panicked people are bouncing into each other, knocking others over. Some are seeking to hide in plain sight. So those are all just different ways people respond to stress. So this is the Station nightclub. A band called Great White was performing on the stage here. There's one entrance that you come into, and then you have to go into this atrium and out this exit, or through this little atrium, and then to the main floor. There's a bar over here and a kitchen. So while Great White is performing, they set a pyrotechnics display, which causes the place to catch on fire. There's an exit door here, the main door's here, and here and here. But because everybody knew how to get into the place, that's how they entered. Everybody wants to come out of this, and numerous people end up being killed by the fire, smoke inhalation, or trampled to death in this venue. Yep. So some of this they say is disturbing, so So that video illustrates the problem of human performance and decision making under extreme stress. The video shows social proofing in action. Initial denial, even when it was obvious that the flames had reached the roof. It was like 30 seconds before people even realized we need to get out of here, that this place is on fire, when the flames were burning and up to the roof. It was because they were watching what everybody else was doing around them, and nobody else was panicking or leaving, so they just went with the crowd and what everybody else was doing. This then sparks a stress response from people that only know one way out. So most of them only knew that one door and how to get out of there.
Terrible setup for a crowd.
Yes, yeah. So each circle represents a body found at that location, with the total number of bodies in white for that area. The number of dead in the exit hall is 31. So people trying to get out of the venue through this one entrance, 31 people died there trying to get out.
Oh, and then the other doctor.
Yep, 18 here, 9 there, 2 in the office, 1 there, 9 in the video game area, 10, probably people trying to figure out how to get out of that area and then being overcome by the smoke and everything else.
Nobody went out.
No, but that's also where the fire was happening. So in order to exit out that door, you would have to notice it and flee through there. And I don't know if necessarily any people did exit there, but from what the video shows, not many did, because that's where the fire was.
Got about 3 minutes. Before smoke inhalation, 5 minutes. You're lucky after that.
Initially, there was no panic, and people were still able to use their human brain to process a proper response, which would be to get out. Once the primary entrance was clogged and inaccessible, panic set in and people reverted to their lizard brain. The only thing they were thinking was, how do I get out of here? When they were able to think rationally, they knew there would be more than one exit besides the one they were using. However, under stress and relying solely on the lizard brain, all they could think about was to flee to the door through which they had entered the building. Basically, the human brain shut down and the lizard brain took over, providing very few options, if not properly prepared ahead of time. So like you were saying, when you go into a restaurant, where are the exits? If you go to a gymnasium or a concert, how do I get out of here? Where are the exits? In a church building, if something were to happen and a fire blocked off the main entrance, how do we get people safely out of this building so we don't have to go through the one entrance everybody knows about? So 31 people, and then most of these other people probably passed out due to smoke inhalation. When there were 2 exits, one in the kitchen, one in the bar, that they could have got out. And that also goes into having people posted that know the venue and are able to help people. Because if there was somebody ushering people, go this way, go this way, go this way, maybe it would have had different results. So it would, yeah. But I think that's just a photo from it.
Worked at the bank, they were remodeling. We had a long room, had an entrance here. And they were talking about blocking off this and that and doing it. And I know I told the interior decorators for first responders, well, you can climb over the walls to get out. Well, anyways, I says, that, I says, there's no windows to jump out of or anything.
Right.
She goes, you wouldn't jump out of a window. I says, I would jump out of a second floor window and risk breaking my leg and have smoke inhalation. She says, well, the fire marshal approved it. I says, well, either he's really stupid or you paid him off. Which one was it?
Right.
The door got there.
Good. That's awesome. And when they get into the Virginia Tech stuff, they'll kind of see that plan of thinking through a situation and looking for other ways out that non-typical will come into play. Yeah.
A lot higher than second floor.
So you obviously want to keep the human brain functioning as long as possible and not letting that lizard brain come into play, not letting your heartbeat get so much that it stops your logical process and you can actually figure out the situation. So you need to tell yourself to calm down, breathe in slowly through your nose, hold it at the top for 2 seconds, breathe out slowly through your mouth, and hold it at the bottom for 2 seconds. This slows your heart rate by 20 to 30 beats per minute and puts you in conditions, 1 to 2 conditions lower on the stress scales. So just that simple task of breathing helps you actually calm down and think through the situation. You are going to be scared, but you can change that to a more useful emotion like anger. And if you stay fit, research has shown people who are fit are generally more capable of coping with stress. So being physically fit, they say, is a good response to help calm yourself too. So also scripting and practicing helps you with that deliberation, go from denial to deliberation quicker. So no matter what, eventually people get placed under enough stress that their human brain shuts down. One of the cool things about the human brain is that you can use it to program your lizard brain beforehand when you're not under stress. Then your lizard brain does a better job when you are under stress. Scripting means thinking through if-then scenarios in your head so that you have a better plan ready. Practicing reinforces this plan. So if you're sitting in church and you think, if somebody is going to come in and shoot us, where are they going to come from? How are they going to get into the building? And then what are my steps? If I'm going to leave, how do I get out of here? If I need to get people to safety or a secure area, where is that? If I need to fight, what am I going to use to fight off this person? So by scripting, practicing ahead of time, and then actually practicing, which in a church situation, there's, other than instructing and training your guys, it's really not much practicing that can be done, because last thing you want to do is have a fire drill in the middle of a church service.
We did talk about having like a fire drill after church. Wasn't that ever on
Yeah.
this meeting?
Yeah.
Like having a fire drill at the end of church
Mhm.
and getting people out?
So realistically, what I think is going to be more happen is you're going to have somebody with a heart attack or a stroke in the middle of a church service. Even no, in real
I
life.
see what you're saying.
So the security team is not just a security team in my mind. It's a team in place that can help and respond to situations that develop, including medical emergencies. So,
We talked about that too.
so if there was that heart attack, your guys would come in and clear out places, get people to move over to certain areas, have some method in place of this is what needs to be done, and it creates that calm, cool environment and keeps that stress level down so people don't get emotional and overreact. Even simple as if your church doesn't have ushers, using, if your guy sees that people are backing up, helping to usher people in and find seats can also allow you to scan the crowd and see who's there. It builds that bonding between you and the visitors. So a lot of people think of security as, oh, what do we need protection for? Well, it can serve a lot more roles than just solely keeping the body safe. So, Rick Rescorla was that person in 9/11. I don't know if you can read the inscription. In 1993, Rescorla was vice president of corporate security for the Dean Witter Morgan Stanley Company when the World Trade Center was bombed the first time. He led the evacuation that day and stayed in the smoldering building for 12 hours, helping firefighters rescue trapped survivors. After the terrorist attack on 9/11, Rescorla again led the evacuation of the World Trade Center. He was last seen going upstairs into the burning building, conducting a final sweep for survivors. He was killed when the South Tower collapsed. His actions that day saved more than 2,700 lives. And we kind of talked about him earlier already.
Less than a month ago, 3,000 friends were on a train bound for Paris, and they heard a gunshot. Amid screams and commotion of the passengers, they quickly focused on a man wielding an AK-47. Almost instantly, one of them said, "Let's go," and the three ran toward the shooter. Those three friends are with us here today. Thank you, Alec, Vincent, and Amber, for what you did on that train. And that's because after Alex said, "Let's go," he and Spencer and Anthony sprinted toward the gunman while he trained his rifle on him. Spencer tackled the assailants and the three worked to disarm them. As we know, Spencer was stabbed in that effort. After they knocked out the gunman, they tended to other injured on board before paramedics and police arrived.
So Spencer, Alex, and Anthony, they fought through fear and moved decisively to defend not only themselves, but others on the train that day. Moving through the denial phase and into action requires commitment to oneself as well as to others that are depending on you to lead them in a grand social proofing experiment that could mean lives. Amanda Ripley states that people who cycle through these stages are more likely to survive. This is a prime example of that. So they heard the gunshot, that denial phase quickly, they were able to process and move through that to deliberation. They realized we need to act, and then they went into action. So the quicker you can move through those 3 stages, the quicker action will be taken.
Less.
So when you hear gunshots, don't deny that they're gunshots, accept for them what they are. They're actual gunshots, and then go to the deliberation phase. So a lot of people say it sounded like fireworks. Why would somebody be setting off fireworks at church or in the business at work? It doesn't make any sense.
But then a lot of these
Right.
A lot of them don't really know the difference.
yeah,
Well, and also some people have never heard gunshots before, so they don't really know what they sound like. All they know is what maybe movies describe them as and all that. So, and also understand that there's barriers where walls, even distance from where you are to where the sound happens dilutes that sound and makes it sound like something else. So even though you heard something, it might have just been a door slam or a book falling. Was that actually a gunshot? What was that noise? If nothing else, hopefully it sparks that desire to, I need to figure out what that noise was. I don't know what the little, see what that does. So that's probably a pretty clear-cut example of like gunshots, but
Don't sound like
no. Okay, we heard it already.
We heard the first shots around 9:40 a.m. I was sitting on the wall of the classroom, so in the hallway, and I could hear.
This is at Virginia
shots
Tech.
getting closer and closer very quickly. And there was only a few seconds between the first time we heard them and when he actually walked in. To me, it sounded like an axe being taken to a piece of wood. And our teacher, she opened the door and she peered outside and she immediately shut the door and she said, "Call 911." And right then, he walked in just seconds after. There's absolutely no time to think or to duck or to take cover. People just kind of fell to the floor. And he immediately walked in shooting, and he went to the other side of the classroom and he started going down the rows. He went down each row very quickly, very purposefully. And I remember thinking, your turn is coming, you're going to get shot. I mean, I didn't realize there was an active shooter, but I knew something bad was happening. He came back to our classroom 3 times, and on the 3rd time, he killed himself in the front of the class. In between each time he was there, you could just hear people crying and coughing, and the cell phone started ringing. When he was in our class, I remember trying not to breathe very much, so he couldn't tell I was alive. Because as my stomach was hitting the chair, I was thinking, he didn't see me breathing, he didn't see me alive, and I was very scared. I'll never forget when the SWAT team first broke in, at around 9:51. The officer in the front of the classroom said, "We have a lot of blacks in here." And at the time, I couldn't comprehend what he was talking about, but he meant triage codes. And I remember looking to the girl to my right and realizing, what black meant. He looked over me and he said, first he said yellow, and then he changed it immediately. He said red, and that's when I first started panicking. I still couldn't speak. I was shot 3 times, lying on my back, and I remember thinking, what do you see, like, what can you see on me that I can, that you would change me from yellow to red? He killed 12 people in my classroom, including our teacher.
So one of people's responses when a situation is going on is just to play dead, to fall down. That was Christina Anderson. She was in room 211 at Virginia Tech. She played dead and was shot a total of 3 times. Once when the shooter first attacked, and twice more when he returned. So playing dead is not a good strategy. If somebody is intent to do harm, they're going to do harm to whoever they can, whenever they can. And
It's been a while since that incident. I went through some of this training and I was working at the old Kirtland. And they said, of course, at that time, cell phones, were really kind of taken off. A lot of people didn't survive with those people. And they were videotaping, they were calling 911. And that's awesome.
Right. Yeah. Through the schools are going to a program called I Love You Guys, this I Love You Guys Foundation. In active shooters, they actually encourage the teachers to take phones and to restrict kids from using their phones because of that situation. Because one, it draws outside attention inside and gets people to flock the area, which is not what you want when you're trying to deal with a major situation. And two, it kind of takes away that reality of what's going on and gives them a distraction, so they're no longer focused on the now, they're off into somewhere else. So there another tactic is hiding and hoping. This is also problematic. There are 2 major issues. The first is that whatever you're hiding behind is probably not bulletproof. This just isn't much. There just isn't much in American construction that will stop bullets. So if you are seen, you will be shot. The second and related issue is that if you are seen, what do you do? In most cases, there is no way out at that point. If you're hiding under a desk and the shooter comes around and spots you, you're pretty much dead. So hiding is called hide and hope. It's not a very effective survival strategy. So the method that they propose, or that is proposed, is avoid, which is the same as run. It used to be called run, hide, fight. Now it's avoid, deny, defend. Is it actually pulling up? There we go. So that's kind of the acronym that they are using now. ADD, avoid, deny, defend. So watch the reaction of the people in the audience. It eventually will pan out so you can see the whole room better. So a guy comes in and starts spray painting the wall, and he spray paints a giant V on the wall for vendetta. And if you can't tell, he's holding a gun in his hand and kind of waving it around and pointing it at people. And now look at what the audience is doing who's watching this. Look how slowly it takes for them to react, and look what, they gather their belongings and make sure that they have everything with them as they leave.
Hey, sir. John, just let us talk. He's talking. John, go ahead.
So then you have somebody who comes in and tries to disarm him.
Is this real?
Yeah, that's a school board.
Shooter?
No, I don't think so. So that's a 2010 Panama City School Board. It says shootings. Let me see real quick. They go into a lot of detail about it. We're going to skip over some of this. It occurred December 14th, 2010 in Panama City, Florida. In the attack, a disgruntled individual, the shooter, fired more than a dozen shots at 6 Bay District School Board members, but missed them all, including the superintendent. So that must come later in the video, or it must not be part of this video. The shooter was then shot several times by a security guard who was a former policeman. Shortly afterward, he was shot several times by a security guard, and then shortly afterward, he killed himself with a shot to the head. Much of the episode and its immediate aftermath was recorded by local television news stations. It's on YouTube as well. He stood up during the school board meeting. He was a 56-year-old ex-convict on probation for aggravated stalking charges. He said, "I have a motion," then promptly pulled out a can of red spray paint and sprayed a V inside a circle as seen in the film V for Vendetta. He then produced a 9mm pistol, causing other staff near the bench and audience members to duck for cover. He aimed the guns at the school board members and used it to point to 2 women saying, "You may leave and you may leave. The women can leave. The 6 men stay, everyone else leave." After the room was evacuated, the shooter told board members he was upset that his wife had been fired as an English teacher. The superintendent, Bill Hoosfelt, after an approximately 4-minute discussion, tried to negotiate with the shooter, saying, "I'm the only one who signs the papers. Will you let them go?" referring to the other board members. Duke denied his request to allow the board members to leave, saying they're part of it. Husfeld then argued with the shooter about his threat, saying, "For what? This isn't worth it." The shooter raised the pistol and leveled it at the superintendent. Husfeld started to hold his arms to his chest, saying, "Please don't, please don't, please." The shooter fired, hitting the table in front of him. The board members dove to the ground behind the desk. Duke accidentally fired a second shot into the floor of the room. Then, after being hit by one of the school resource officer's rounds, fired 2 or 3 more times behind the table. Despite 4 or 5 shots being fired from the shooter's gun, no board members were hit. He was shot again by Jones, fell to the ground, Boundley fired a few more times at Jones, then put the gun to his head and committed suicide. Jones was not injured. And it was minutes after the shooting, the local news station uploaded the video to YouTube and other sites, where it received more than 1 million views in less than a week. So at minutes after the shooting, they put it on YouTube. So,
It's hard to say what you would do in a situation, but it's interesting that a couple of them look like they're not phased, they're not getting up out of the chair.
right. And it took a while for everybody to react. And like the female had a good plan of action. She tried to disarm him, but the way she went about it was just like, it didn't have any effect on him whatsoever. And after that, she kind of just falls to the ground and basically is almost saying, "Please don't," it doesn't say that she like begs for her life or anything, but she fell to the ground and just laid there, which
The other two sit right there and watch it. They don't
Right.
react.
When she came up and got him, that's when you jump up and grab his arm.
Right. That's why when everybody pile on them, but everybody is past, they haven't gone into that deliberation mode. I don't know what she used.
Like paper, piece of paper.
Yeah.
At least have a coffee cup or
Paper.
something. Whack 'em up.
Yeah, the paper, I think it's too much, but hey, I kudos for her for trying.
Right.
Jumped up and choked it.
Well, that's what I'm saying, it's just interesting, your body language, it's just sitting there like.
Yeah, it doesn't really say offhand what she tried to hit him with, but it was something that was enough to disarm him. So She took some action, but it just wasn't enough. He's a big guy anyways. So it could have potentially cost her her life. Lucky it did. And lucky he was a bad shot because nobody lost their life. But it just goes to show, like, in that situation, when you can leave your stuff and leave. Because you never know when his mood is going to change and he's going to decide, I don't want you to leave. Oh, yeah.
Because people go,
Yep.
you know.
Have a conversation with the person behind them before they, hopefully not, but
What are you gonna do? I'm thinking of leaving. Oh, dear.
so the first step, avoid or run, leave ASAP, Luna, as soon as possible, know where your exits are, and once you're free, call 911 and get resources there. But they in all these trainings we undertake, first, get out of the situation. Don't call 911 in the situation, because that's just going to attract attention to you. Get out first and then call 911.
What do you do if you're on one of these teams?
That's,
I mean, do you still plan to leave?
no. I'm on that team. I have, see, as a trooper with the state police, I get an emergency stipend. So if we see a situation, we're supposed to act on that situation. If it's a misdemeanor, we can just be a witness. The higher the situation, if it's a felony, we have a duty to intervene. So we have to do something. You guys have to determine what you'll do yourself. If you can get out and call 911, that's great. If you are armed or you want to take the fight to the person, protect others, that's completely up to you. And that's honestly, I think, what most people would do. But that's something you have to determine as a board. Are you going to have people armed? Who's allowed to carry? Is there a training that they have to undergo? What happens if there's a shooter? Are we going to eliminate that threat, or are we going to get people out and try to protect people that way? It's something to think about. I think most people would take the fight and protect people. But then if it's in the sanctuary, where are you approaching from? If you engage that person, are you firing into a crowd, and are you going to create casualties as well? There's just a lot to consider and to talk about as a team. If like at our church, we have a rotation of guys every 4 weeks. So team 1 is up 1 week, 2, 3, 4, and then it goes back to team 1. So pretty much people are serving once a month. This lets people actually enjoy church services like they intend when they come to church, and aren't always serving, because you'll get burned out if you're always serving. Perfect. My ideal plan is to have 3 people on board. That way, if there is a situation, one person can do one thing, 2 others can do something else. You're never alone. Because if you're helping somebody who's having a medical emergency, who's calling 911? Your partner can be there helping you out, calling 911, escorting people out. So I think at least 3 is an ideal number, but that all depends on how many people you have willing to serve. We're finally at our church able to have 3 people per team, but it's been years and years and years where there's only been 2, because that's the only people I could get to serve. People serve for a while and say, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore, things like that. So it's hard to keep people invested in what's going on. That's just kind of the plan that I have in place, but every church is different based on, what your mission is. So there's not one right or wrong way to do it. It's just whatever you guys feel is best for your situation.
I have to be back in Roscommon in a half hour, so I just want to say thank you for coming, and I'll try and catch up with you guys and go over some notes and stuff.
Yeah, no problem, sir. None at all. It is fairly lengthy information. I guess I didn't realize until I got into it how long, with all the videos and everything. Yep. So, on January 9th, 2015, a gunman who who had pledged allegiance to the Islamic State of Iraq, and the Levant attacked the people in a hyper cashier kosher food superette at Porta de Venice in East Paris. He killed 4 people, all of whom were Jews, and took several hostages. Some media outlets claimed he had a female accomplice, speculated initially to be his common-law wife. It was later confirmed to be a gunman in a shooting in Monterey the previous day. In that shooting, he killed a municipal police officer. Witness stated people were buying things when a man came in with a rifle and started shooting in all directions. I ran out. The shooting continued for several seconds. The suspect recorded several minutes of the attack using a GoPro camera attached to his torso and emailed a copy of the footage using a computer at the supermarket. The video included the death of 3 of the victims. In an interview with a TV station during the standoff, he stated that he targeted the Jews at the kosher grocery to defend Muslim, notably Palestinians. He said his action was revenge for the Syrian government's action and against the Western Coalition actions in Mali, Iraq, and Afghanistan. They were hailed as heroes. Yoan Kuan, age 22, and Yov Hatbed, age 21, were hailed as heroes by their fellow hostages as they were murdered by the suspect while seeking to overcome him and free the other hostages in the store. The suspect repeatedly abandoned one of his weapons on a countertop in the store as he entered after it had jammed. After he proceeded to threaten a customer with a small child at the beginning of the attack, Cohen, an employee, attempted to grab the abandoned weapon with the help of Hatab and take him down. When the malfunctioning gun jammed on Cohen at that moment, the suspect shot Cohen in the head and then proceeded to shoot Hatab. The remaining victims in the attack, Francos, Michael, and Philip, reportedly immediately sought to resist him as well. So they were victims as well. Lassan, a shop assistant, was also hailed as a hero in the hostage crisis for hiding people from the gunman and assisting police after his escape. During the hostage crisis, Bethel helped hide hostages in a cold storage container in the basement. Bethel then tried to call the police, but the line was busy, so he called his friend. And the friend alerted the authorities about the hostage situation by flagging down a policeman. When the suspect opened fire in the store, killing Kohan, Hatab, Saab, and Brahim, and taking hostages, Bethel led 15 people into a downstairs cold storage room for safety. Bethel was then able to escape alone by slipping out of the store using elevator equipment. Upon leaving the store, he was immediately handcuffed and arrested by police who suspected him of playing a role in the attack. He was released after an hour and a half. Bethel provided the officers with a key to open the Marcus metal blinds. The suspect was reportedly in contact with the Kochu brothers as the sieges of both and the brothers progressed simultaneously, and told police that he would kill hostages if the brothers were harmed. So there must have been some other situation going on at the same time as this one. Nearby schools were placed under lockdown and local Jewish businesses were shut down as a precaution. So I think what they're trying to show here is that people ran, people tried to intervene, but the one lady, the Bethili, took people down and hid them away and barred the door. And she was able to save 15 people by getting out of the situation and denying the person access to those people. So that was a lot to go through there. So also consider, so if you are, first is avoid, get out of the situation. The second step is to deny. So in this situation, you have something going on where you have to come into this back room what are you going to do when you're in that back room? Are you going to just hide by the door? Try to block that door or find some way to close that door so we can't force it open. Look for other places, like you have a place up here where you could get up to and hide so that somebody coming in can't see you right away. Or there's also a door here. Can you exit from that door and get out of this situation completely? So don't limit yourself just to that room. Think about secondary exits, windows, fire escapes, breaking through drywall, getting out of the store that way or into a different room. And you can see a couple of people hiding right here in that. Is that really the best place to hide? Because all they have to do is come around and see you and, you're a goner then. Maybe if you pull something in front of you and try to at least hide your position from them, they will think twice and leave the situation. So you can see like the ladder and the door, just other ways where you could hide in the room like we talked about. So after avoid is deny and hide. Lock the door, turn the lights off, get out of sight. If you're gonna hide, make sure you hide well so they can't get in or can't find you. Barricade the door, so heavier is better. The more you can put in front is better. And if you can use a doorstop, is that better, or is it a doorstop that's going to actually work, or is it just going to slide as soon as you open the door? We've all had those doorstops that are in place that never actually work as doorstops. So what are you trying to use to stop the doors? A lot of doors have hinges that are interior. If you have something that you can wrap around those hinges won't be able to open, and therefore the door is basically locked in place. So using a belt, things like that, to stop that door from opening will potentially buy you time and give the police a chance to arrive. In school shootings, they encourage kids to bar the doors and get out of sight. They encourage all the shades on the windows to be pulled or windows to be blocked, because throughout all the school shootings, shooters are looking for easy victims. So there has been very few, if any, attempts to actually bust through a door to get to people, because that takes effort and time, and they're just looking for easy victims. There has been some times where they have shot through doors, but that's when they were able to see people in that classroom. So they fired a couple rounds through the doors trying to hit those people. But there's no guarantee you're going to hit them, and you can't see results. So they move on to other targets. So getting people from being those easy targets and into places where they're no longer easy targets is paramount in situations like that.
Do they have that, somebody created some kind of a door stop in school last year. Do they have that up there?
The Nighthawk system, there's a couple of kinds. There's ones that they put in the floor and the door can't open because it's on the floor, or there's ones that are on the door that are kind of C-shaped that prevent the door from opening. So all the schools up here have those in place to prevent people, but it takes you to install those. They're not automatic. Some of the bigger schools out there do have automatics where somebody has to push a button and then lockdown goes in place. But if you're trying to get people in from the hallway and the door's locked, can you really get people into a locked room? So those have some drawbacks as well. But at the same time, you don't want to be ushering people into a room if somebody's out there shooting. There's just a lot of different things to take into account in those situations. So this is showing, can you push that stuff against the door and block the door from them entering the door, or moving in front of you to hide yourself better so that, they can't see you as easily? What can you use in that room to stop that person from entering that room? And then simple door stops. If they work, they work, but we've all used them on certain types of floors that they don't work at all. So it could be a good idea, but at the same time, it might not be very effective at all. And then think about, how does the door open? Does it open in or does it open out? If you're in here and that door opens out, how are you going to block that door and prevent somebody from coming in? So by using a rope or a tension sleeve, something where you can tie those handles together. This one doesn't have handles on it. So how, if somebody was coming in here, would you bar that door and prevent somebody from gaining access to this area? Probably the better solution is not be in this area if somebody's trying to get in. Use a window or use another door and get out of the situation, or find a better place to be. This is like one of the types of locks that schools have. It goes on the door and then it loops around the jamb, and you cannot open that door. Kalkaska schools have this type of locks on their doors. So there's a lot of different types like that.
Where do they keep
Right in a sleeve right next to it. So you just open it up, slide it in, and you're done. So there's each, maybe you won't have people in here, so you don't have to worry about locking these doors. But if it's going to be an area where people are, it's definitely something to think about, of how are we going to prevent people from gaining access to this if need be.
Anywhere near this traumatic. And so I'm hearing the gunfire in the hallway, and I'm thinking in my mind, I'm the first classroom. Why isn't he coming? I'm thinking we're next, and and in my mind I'm thinking, as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, what are your thoughts? What are your, and I'm thinking that I have to almost be their parent. Like I have to tell them, So I said to them, I need you to know that I love you all very much, and that it's going to be okay, because I thought that was the last thing they were ever going to hear. I thought we were all going to die. And I don't know if that's okay, teachers, and, but I wanted them to know someone loved them, and I wanted that to be one of the last things they heard. Not the gunfire in the hallway. It's so horrible. Horrible.
How did you know you were going to be okay?
I didn't. What finally happened was the gunfire stopped. The gunfire wasn't that long, so that stopped, but I said, no, we're not going anywhere. We're staying here until someone good comes in, gets us out. So eventually what happened was the police came and started knocking, and obviously, I was completely beside myself, and I said, I don't believe you. You need to put your badges under the door. So they put their badges under the door. I said, if you're really a police officer, then you would have a way to get in here. You would have a key, or you would have gotten it from the jam. If everything's okay now, you would have found the keys. So he had the keys, and he found the right one, and he unlocked the door, and then they brought us out to the firehouse to meet up with the rest of the teachers and students, waiting for parents to come and pick them up.
I think there are a lot of people who wish.
She was really forward-thinking at that time,
Yes.
being one of the first ones to really hit the media.
Yep. And that shows an example of someone
Yeah.
going into an interior room, plus using objects to bar the doorway to prevent that person from getting in. So just a real-life example of that in action.
And I sat down.
So if somebody is coming into a room and you have to fight them, your position in that room is extremely important. So they say next to the door, grab the gun, multiple people if possible, and use switch motions. But you also have to realize that most people don't have a combat mindset, and they need to fully understand the gravity of the situation when dealing with a determined person committed to kill people. So stand near the door, not across the room. If you are close, you have a chance to fight. If you are far, you can get shot. Get a hold of the gun, don't let go, and point it away from people. Fight for your life. This is not a fair fight. So remember that. He's killing people, so do whatever it takes to win that fight. Use improvised weapons, gouge eyes, bite, kick, pull hair. Shift your emotions from fear to anger. and then channel this anger to focus all your aggression solely upon your survival and those other innocents that will be harmed if you fail. So when it comes time to fighting, it's a fight for your life, and fight like you're fighting for that.
Are we gonna be charged with a felony if we shoot him in the head?
No, if it's self-defense, then no. You do what, if somebody is looking to do harm or kill somebody, you're defending your life, and you have every right to defend your life and the life of others. So it's whatever's needed to end that threat. So we're watching this guy right here. There's a shooting going on at the counter. And first, he thinks about grabbing that bottle of wine. Look at this lady, her response is just to play dead in the aisleway. These ones are standing back there really not knowing what to do. So the gentleman looks for alternatives by grabbing what appears to a bottle of wine in preparation to defend himself. He later determines that avoidance is the better option and runs down an aisle and escapes out the back of the store. In contrast, watch the lady in the blue shirt. As we saw earlier with Christina Anderson, using the play dead approach is a flawed tactic. So the guy grabbed a bottle of wine, was going to defend himself, but he decided, I can get out of here, so he fled the store.
Yeah.
That lady, I don't know if anything ever happened to her, but her approach of laying down and playing dead.
Is that the same store video earlier, different camera?
I think so. I think it's a different area.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, camera 10 instead of 9.
So, this is about mindset. The point is that being shot does not mean you are dead. You can and must keep fighting. So this is Lieutenant Brian Murphy. He was part of a shooting that was outside of a school, I believe, in a parking lot. And so his thought was, I'm not going out in the parking lot. I'm not going out like this. I'm not going to let my wife down, let my daughters down, and I'm not letting my stepkids down. So he was, you can see the scar.
Yeah.
So he was injured in whatever situation was going on, but
This was fight.
that was his mindset that he had, even though he was injured. So your surroundings, check your environment as well as the room you are presenting in. So in this situation, if somebody were to come in the doors, where will you go to avoid? How will you deny them? And how can you defend the room? Obviously defending, if you have firearms, is a whole lot easier than not having firearms, but if you didn't have anything on you, you could use tables to hit them with or throw at them, chairs, lanterns, even ornaments could be used as weapons. If you were going to flee, know the building and how to get out of here, or avoid if you have to get out of here. Just knowing what's around you and what your surroundings is, kind of practicing and scripting out what would happen if somebody were to come in right now. So what you do matters. It's all about either getting away from the situation or buying time until law enforcement can arrive on scene. So it's very important to kind of script and plan about how you would handle a situation. So this is kind of a flow chart of the situation. So the attack starts. Where are the primary exits? Can you avoid? Then get out. You can't avoid, you can't leave, then deny by blocking the doors. Are there other exits? Then maybe move to a different room and leave that way, usher people out that way, and leave the situation. No, then the only thing you have is you have to defend yourself. So just kind of a way to think through those whole steps.
And they also, now they go into Virginia Tech. This is Norris Hall where the main shooting happened. It happened on the second floor. And it illustrates the different responses that people had in this situation. This is the hallway where the shooter roamed, going from room to room, basically killing people.
Yeah, he took chains and locked those doors.
He barred the main
around
entry
doors,
doors
yeah.
to prevent people from getting in the building.
Oh, yeah.
So he had killed 2 students earlier in the morning, which led to a very large police presence to respond to Norris Hall. The suspect first entered room 206, then 207, and then 211. And it was probably because of where the doors were oriented. It looks like 206's door is here, 207 is right across, and 211 is down further. Every single person in room 211 was shot, and with 11 killed and 6 wounded. This was a 3rd room attacked and was revisited by the suspect 2 more times. Room 204 was Professor Lebruscu. The professor held the door closed while 10 of his students escaped. So they were able to get out of the windows back here. The professor and another student were killed and 4 were wounded. However, his delaying action by holding the door saved numerous lives. Room 205 was a complete denial, with students lying on the floor and putting their feet against the door, holding it closed. While the suspect did shoot through the door, no one was injured by gunfire in this room. So you got just a different case study of what happens. So room 206 is where the shooting started. The shooter walked in and started killing people. He left and returned to shoot more people. So he entered that room several times. So room 211, a teacher heard shots, told students to call 911. Students attempted to block the door with a desk. The shooter pushed his way in, shot the professor, and walked down the aisle killing students. The shooter returned later and shot more students. So that was so room 207 was the second room attacked. The shooter walked in and shot several students and the teacher. He then walked down the aisle shooting students. He left. He attempted to return, but students used their bodies to barricade the door. Shooter got the door 1 inch open. He also fired several shots into the doorknob area, but no one was hit by these shots. So the red shows the people that were shot and killed. The yellow is people wounded, and then the green is people that were not injured in the attack. So room 204 is the Professor Lebruscu's, who is a Holocaust survivor room. He held the door shut and had his students jump out the windows. The shooter shot the professor through the door, killing him, but 10 students made it out of the window before the shooter got in. 2 more were shot trying to get out, but both survived. Of the 6 who did not get out, 4 were shot, and 1 of those shot died. So the professor is here, plus 4 were wounded, and then 1 succumbed to their injuries. Room 205 was the last room. They were able to hear the shots and keep the door closed, and nobody was hurt or killed in that room. So the first couple rooms where he had complete access to, and that was the one where that young lady attempted to play dead. Luckily she survived, but playing dead did not work for her. And that shows just time. These people had no time. These people really didn't have much time, but these ones did. You know, they had a little more time than these guys, but still, look at the number of people who were hurt and shot in that room. And a lot of that is that denial of what is going on, what is all this noise, what's happening. So the sooner you can accept what the reality is and take actions like these people did, the more people will survive that situation.
Yeah, that guy in the Holocaust, see, he already probably was of a mindset because he'd been through something.
Yeah, he's had the experience to say, this is what's going on, there's something happening, we need to take action.
Yeah.
So he was able to go from that denial to deliberation to action steps a whole lot quicker than other people were. So there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people in this room who survived, but they had the time. They had the time to bar that door and do something to prevent that guy from getting in. So of the casualties in room 206, like 90% were shot and 79 were killed. And that was the first room. And then 211 was next. So 100% were shot and almost 64% were killed. And then it went down the more time they had to protect themselves and find a way to bar him or get out. So time is drastic in these situations. So when we arrive on scene, the first thing we're going to do is eliminate the threat. That's our main focus. And also remember that the police are experiencing all the stress symptoms that we talked about before. So make things easier for them. Know that you might be handcuffed, so just go along with it. It will get sorted out later. If you're not the person doing harm, it's just more of a security measure to make sure the situation and to sort everything out. You might be told to do things that violate policy. That's okay. The police have a better awareness of what is going on than you do. Just go along with it. So follow commands, show your palms, keep your hands visible so that they know you're not a threat, and just stay still until they tell you to move. Sudden movements and kind of erratic behavior is not a good idea in stressful situations. So
Yeah, we see that on the media all the time.
So
People doing crazy things.
So like we talked about, the police will seek out the shooter first. They will not stop to help you until they know the shooter is down.
Right.
After that, they will help those who are wounded and get people out of the building. So, but our main threat is to stop the killing and stop the dying. There you are.
Are you ready? If you're not cool, I'm not walking up there. Sir? Go. Walk to that deputy, keep your hands right at the end, grab all the way to that deputy. You're gonna make a left with the deputy's out. Thank you. Try to relax, everyone, try to relax. I'll take a bullet before you do, that's for damn sure. Just be cool, okay?
So this is a deputy escorting people out of a building after a shooting incident. He is talking to them as if they're citizens, not suspects. However, he still asks them to keep their hands up and also attempts to calm them down by telling them that he will take a bullet for them. So after police have secured the scene, EMS is allowed to come in the building and start with triage. EMS will not enter until the scene is declared secure. This could take several hours. Meanwhile, people are bleeding to death. Training programs are available that teach people how to treat hemorrhaging. So after a situation, if your people are knowledgeable about how to stop the bleed and do triage, that will help people survive. Wounds to legs, blood loss is an extreme issue with any injury. So even the use of simple tourniquets and things like that could help save people's lives. So I think EMS will probably be here quicker than several hours. But it all depends on how mass the situation is, how many people, how big, like a school building will have to be cleared and made safe before they're allowed in the scene, just things like that. So if you have some form of training at least your security team on basic first aid care, it could make all the difference in the world. So like Stop the Bleed is one program that people, citizens can use. Just applying pressure with the hand, applying dressings, applying tourniquets. It's just an easy, simple way to teach people first aid to help them through that situation. We recommend requiring everyone to go to at least one private counseling session to help them assess where they're at. Many people will need a lot of additional helps. So everybody responds to situations differently. Some, it just rolls right off their back. Other internalize it. Some are, a mess over the situation. But even those who internalize it still probably have some war that's going on inside them. So if there's a situation that happens, know that there's going to be issues that last past just that day. And then also, this program says that not to name the shooters, like any of the shooters in any of these situations, they didn't put their name out there. Most of the shooters are motivated by a desire for fame and notoriety. They were nothing in their lives, and committing mass murder is a way of becoming something. So why give them that? Why not take away at least one part of that motivation? They deserve to be anonymous in death, as they were in life, if it's the victims that desire to be remembered. So they encourage people not to say names. So if you ever read news stories and people aren't saying the names, it's because by not publicizing that notoriety, it could prevent somebody from doing this in the future because, well, those people didn't get recognition, so I'm not going to. So, instead they say, recognize the heroes. This is Victoria Soto. She was a first grade teacher at Sandy Hook. On the day of the incident, the person came to the school to murder as many kids as he could. She put herself between him and her kids. Her classroom was where some of the kids survived. She gave up her life to protect them. So remember Victoria. And this is a PE teacher, Angela McQueen. She's a PE and math teacher in Manton, Illinois. She was faced with a student shooter. She ran and attacked the shooter, taking him down and holding him until police arrived. So those are just a couple heroes that should be remembered instead of the shooters themselves. So, kind of in active shooter events, there's really no good response that you can really plan for, but you can have plans in place. They encourage the avoid, deny, defend. Get people out of there so people don't die. If you have to deny them, put them in rooms where nobody can access, and then at the end, defend that situation. As you saw from the Virginia Tech situation, if you have more time, that helps you develop a plan faster, but the sooner you can go from that denial to realizing what's happened, to go through that deliberation and then taking action, the quicker the situation will be ended, so. So that's it. So,
Thank you.
it's a whole lot of information. And it's kind of up to you guys to determine, you know, what you want to do as a body for your congregation, you know, so.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So we've got doors that we talked about locking this end door, which we've been keeping open during our service. We talked about locking that shut.
So what's
And just leaving this one open.
what's the purpose for having that door open?
It was
But,
just if people came in that way.
well, that's where everybody comes in,
Yeah.
or here.
People come in here or there.
So
Closing
convenience
it.
sake, basically?
So, but
So-
we talked about locking that.
Because classrooms are covered.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
we should have that locked.
So our church building is just a pole barn that was retrofitted into a church. So there's two swinging doors that come into the sanctuary. There's two swinging doors that come open into the fellowship area. So you enter the fellowship area and then there you enter the sanctuary. Outside doors here, and then there's a single door that opens into the hallway where the classrooms are. So that door is shut and locked and the sanctuary doors are shut and locked. And then we funnel people in through those main entry doors only. A lot of that is so that people aren't entering the sanctuary as the worship time and service time is going on. It's just a big, distraction. But also, we don't want, and we have arrows pointing, use that door. So, I mean, if that's what you guys want to do, that's fine. But maybe give them a time frame. Hey, these doors will be open until service starts, and then after service starts, they're locked.
Yeah, we talked about that.
We talked about having it shut, well, I think pastor wanted 15 minutes, I said no, 5 minutes would be the most.
Yeah.
15 sounds like an awful long time.
5 minutes, that door's locked, and even these doors can be locked, and we're even having a bid put on the outside doors of the little lobby, or the little vestibule here, that can be locked.
Right.
So, like when you say avoid, deny, defend, my thought before on some of the state police came to a meeting we had in Monroe, Michigan a few years ago, about, locking doors, putting cameras on the outside so the security team can monitor. So the big thing is like deny them entry to begin with.
Right, right.
And then if they do gain entry, by the time they gain entry, we can have people being avoided, getting out while you're being called and.
Right, right. So do you have greeters? Do you have greeters or ushers?
Yeah.
We have
We have a couple of ushers.
ushers, but they join in the service when service starts, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then pastors talked about having greeters,
So
having a greeting.
That's where our security guys work, is they open the doors and greet people in and hand out bulletins as people are coming. One, it's a nice welcome for people coming into. But two, you kind of get to gauge who's coming and entering. You see the parking lot and what's going on in the parking lot. This is a little different setup than what our church is, with the roundabout, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that get dropped off.
Have you been shown around
No,
the facility?
No. I've been in here a couple times, so I know just the basic general layout, but I don't know much about the church.
We have that main entrance, that door, this door, and there's another exit door over there that's locked.
Okay.
All the time.
Right.
It's not an entrance for activities.
Right, it just
Okay.
kind of
So
goes
it's
out.
just the main one here and then the one down this hall.
Right, and there's two sets of entry doors right here.
Yeah.
Two double doors.
There's also that little door that goes off in the kitchen too.
But that's locked.
Yeah, I know, but I mean,
But it would be good for,
People know that there's a door there so they can exit there.
right. And it's also good for your guys or whoever's, before service starts, to just make sure that those doors are unlocked, because people unlock doors and leave for the day and forget that things are unlocked, Calvary Baptist Church in West Branch was broken into a little while ago because somebody left a window open. So the person who broke in was able to get in through that window and they stole a bunch of stuff from the church.
That was part of our SOP, we're talking about, you know, at the end, make sure all windows and doors are closed, locked when it's done. And
Yep, even if you have a rotation of people who, okay, it's your week to stay and be the last person, and your job after everybody leaves is to make sure, one, there's nobody in the building, but two, make sure everything's closed and locked and the lights are off, so you're saving money and just things like that.
And one of the other things was to, you know, to come here early enough. I mean, the pastor gets here around 8 o'clock, I think. You know, be here early to check everything before everything's all over.
Right.
Before people start coming.
The hard thing with the church is you've had people who've been going through here for years, and they're used to coming in that entrance, and they're set in their routines, and any pushback against their routines is gonna create static.
Yeah.
So, you gotta wage, okay, is this really worth the pushback that we might get from it? Or are we able to tell this person, hey, this is why we're doing it? And as long as you can articulate to most people, they understand and they will come to accept those new terms. It's just new. People don't people are set in their routines. Everybody sits in the majority of the people have their seats and they sit in those same seats every single Sunday. And if you ask them to scoot in or move, they're not gonna like it.
I get there before them, so they have to move.
I think that door needs to be shut though, because, and I know Craig's made this comment, I know Dave and I, my husband and I, we feel the same way. Every time that bell goes, when somebody opens that door, we're looking behind us. It's very distracting, so that's reason enough.
Well, the thing is, we have our team, like you say, have the greeter down there, have another greeter with bulletins or something. And then when you're there, when it's time, bam, that door's closed, no more entry.
Right. Then about 15 minutes into after the service starts, the children go down there.
Okay.
So they're not down there first, which is good.
Right.
You know, when people are coming.
Right.
I mean, any, like that, it was in Idaho or Utah, that one kid got, you know, people today can look at the internet and get energized with Islam or whatever else it is.
Right.
He at least posted he's gonna do something, and they got him before he went to that church that he was gonna attack.
Right.
I mean, we're up here where you think, well, hey, we're not in a big city, we're not in this and that. Anybody can get energized, turned on to doing violence because of the internet.
Both sides of the argument, people, feel they're gonna take their gun rights away, they could act on it, or people feel there's not enough gun laws, they could act on it to make a statement, it's. So, the door at the end, you guys gotta decide what's the best method. I would recommend at least some point to lock it so that one service is going on, people can't get in that way and they have to come through the one entrance that is being monitored and easily observable. Our security team, I have them roam the parking lot just to make sure that there's, at least once, just a presence. Presence will stop a lot of stuff from happening. They also work as attendance takers. So while they're out in the parking lot, we need to, our building isn't big enough for the people we have attending right now. So we're trying to figure out ways to expand. So we are trying to count vehicles to see how big of a parking lot we need to expand to. So that while they're out walking through the parking lot, they're also counting vehicles to see, how much space we need. They take attendance of how many people are there so that we can, if we need to add on or find a different building, we know what we need to accommodate for. But also while they're scanning the crowd, they're looking for somebody who's out of place. Shouldn't say out of place because this is church and we welcome everybody. But somebody who's just not acting like a normal church parishioner, And even if it's somebody who is gonna stand up and cause a disturbance, by noting that earlier and having just somebody sit by them,
have somebody near them.
it might stop some of that from happening. So by counting and keeping track of who's there, it gives you a barometer of what's happening in the service at that time.
Do you wanna go through our church?
Sure.
So when service is going, and we've got people, you know, somebody's always gonna be out here, these doors could be locked too, right?
They could.
So that
Yeah.
when somebody does come, let's say 10 minutes late, you could just open the door and walk them.
Right, right.
But that way, you know, it's now, everything's locked.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is that, you guys leave your door open?
we leave the one door open, but that's where our security guys hang out.
That's what I mean, if they're,
Yeah.
right?
And that, you know, they can watch the parking lot, they can see what's going on, and a lot of times they just stand and talk and.
So it's kind of the same thing, you're there or locked.
Yeah. If you completely lock down the building, I would think you're probably gonna get pushed back from certain people,
Yeah.
especially the latecomers. Well, you're not trusting in God, you know, why do we have to completely lock the buildings and all that? So by having a presence there, it kind of is
I
the
trust
same.
in God to tell me to be prepared.
Well, there's numerous verses that he says, trust in me, but
Yeah.
also act, so.
Oh, yeah, it's told you need to be prepared. Abraham had 300 some guys come with him when he needed to pick up, say, Lot or somebody.
I just want to encourage you to get here on time, and that is.
Never gonna happen.
Well,
I pretty much know who's gonna show up to our church late and about what time they're gonna show up for. And I can't say anything, we're almost always 5 minutes late for Sunday school, so.
This
Even when I was
end door-
teaching it, we were still.
This end door is a quick fix, because you got kids
yeah.
down there,
Yeah.
and the
And-
bell. Those are our two excuses right there.
One of the,
What was the second one?
The kids and that bell,
Oh, yeah,
you know.
the doorbell.
But even just with the kids,
That should be our main.
that should be our main, and so
More
that
than
could be our
likely-
excuse.
more than likely, if you're gonna have a situation, it's gonna be a custody issue or separated parents where one of the parents is gonna come and try to take their kids out of the building.
Yeah.
And if they have easy access to those children, it's just gonna embolden them to come and do it. They know that they're in this class at a certain time. I can come in, grab the kid and go.
Yeah.
That's,
So we don't need to scare anybody, we can just use that as our excuse, and it solves both problems.
I don't need to be scared. Everybody knows the kind of stuff that's in the news that's happening in the last 10 years or so.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and the purpose isn't to scare people, but it's just, these are new measures we took in place, and a lot of times if you can couch it with a different reasoning, like, hey,
That's
we
what
wanna
I'm saying.
protect our kids,
Yeah.
we don't want people to come in and hurt them, then they're more willing to accept that, rather than, well, we don't want somebody coming in and hurting and shooting us.
Right,
Well,
Right.
that's not gonna happen, and what, you know.
right, use
So-
the kids as the reason.
Right.
Just like burglars or whatever, how they tell you to, protect your house. If you make it less easy,
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So if we make it less easy for anything to happen here,
Yeah.
it's most likely hard to happen and it won't happen.
Right, yep. And even not calling yourself a security team, calling
Right.
yourselves like a response team or a welcoming team, you know.
Safety,
and-
what
We're
we're-
safety.
Safety and security.
We're not only here to keep people safe, but if there's a medical emergency, we're gonna
That-
respond and help that. We're gonna help guide visitors to where the bathroom is and help them figure out where to send their kids when it's time. Just all that stuff, it's more, it takes the focus off of the scariness of the world and kind of puts it on.
Security and more on,
Yeah.
like, helping.
Yeah. And at the same time, you shouldn't be deceiving people either, but a lot of times if you can kind of include more things into an area and make it
Right.
more, it's more acceptable to people.
You were here when Tom Anderson was here, weren't you? Yeah, he talked more about the tax and stuff on Christians than we've heard and seen lately, but, just because it hasn't happened within 100 miles of here, doesn't mean you can't be aware and be prepared.
Should always be prepared.
Right. And if you think about it the other way of statistics, because it hasn't happened for a long time within 100 miles, that maybe that just means the odds of it happening are increasing every day. I don't know if the world works that way, but it's just one way of looking at it.
Does the Post or any of, you know, like you guys, the sheriffs or whatever, do you guys get any uptick on information about any kind of threats or things going on that, for like churches and that?
We haven't really got any threats like specific to certain buildings or anything, just because there hasn't been any. But we get notifications of these people were seen outside of Camp Grayling and were acting funny, or this person has made these comments and this is who he is, where he lives, and just be aware, officer safety cautions, things like that.
Besides, like the pastor of the church, should we have, like on our response team, our safety response team, is there something that you guys do to contact us, to make something aware if you've heard something?
If there was an actual legitimate threat to you guys, you would have people here. Like, if there was somebody saying, I'm gonna come to the Global Methodist Church and kill everybody in there, you would probably have a couple police cars here.
Who would you contact for us to know ahead also?
We would probably reach out to the pastor or
We're trying to
whoever.
kind of eliminate that, because that could happen during service.
Right.
So we were thinking, we're gonna have a
And like,
person.
he's not even here for 2 weeks, so.
Right, but
So
we'll have
maybe-
a person that is gonna be the.
So maybe on like your website or on a directory or some sort, have, probably they're gonna call, the number that's listed is probably the office number. So whoever answers the office phone is who you're gonna talk to. So maybe instead have somebody's cell phone as the main, but then do you really want that person to be called with any church question that they have of, you know, what time is church service, or can I have my baby shower here, or things like that?
Well, like during service,
There's nobody in the
there'd be
office.
nobody to answer the phone at all.
Right.
Right, and that's the problem, because like if I heard of a threat and I need to get hold of the church and I tried to call, I'm gonna just look for that number, and realistically, it's not feasible to have every single contact person for every single church in the area, because there's just too many. And probably knowing troopers, even if they have that list, they're gonna put it for something. When it comes time to do it, they're never gonna be able to find that list or that contact person.
Well, I think that might be something that we'll discuss, because like if the phone is ringing, one of us will answer it.
Sure.
Or there could very well be a capability of forwarding the phone to a cell phone during church service.
During church.
Did you say there's no one in the post?
A lot of times at night, our night cars start out in Kalkaska, and we have 2 bodies on, and they'll double up and be in a single car. So a lot of times we have 1 car with 2 people in Kalkaska for all 3 counties we cover. So the post is manned 8 to 4, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. After that, there's no guarantee that somebody's gonna be there.
So that's just Monday through Friday?
Monday through Friday. And that's, the desk sergeant will be there. If there's an extreme serious situation like a shooting, most likely he'll close the post down, lock the front door and leave and come, you know, especially if it's here. But it all depends on what's happening at the time and if there's people in the post and if he can. So.
I was a fire and safety officer at the state hospital and then the forensic center after they closed IPSI.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a disaster plan of any real kind. You know, since I was the head safety guy there, I know they changed your emergency response from, used to be Jolly Road or something, out to the B response. On the west side, everything's down at your one area where you train and everything.
Okay, down at the academy down there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we had a disaster drill, you know, I chaired it with all the psychiatrists and everybody that aren't always fun to work with for this kind of stuff. So we had a disaster drill, and we had the state police, sheriff, you know, local police, fire departments, and the scenario was somebody brought in our visiting center where they can bring people in and see the inmates, you know, set up a bomb. Well, we found out real quick that says we won't go in. there may be a second bomb.
Right.
And like, that was never told, that, I never, for all the stuff I read through the state police, you know, to make our disaster plan,
Yeah,
it was like, they're not gonna come in until they can decide whether there was another bomb
Right,
that was there.
right.
So, there's so many little things that can pop up when you're doing stuff.
And we're trained that when we respond to an event to be aware of secondary events, secondary
yes.
incendiary devices, secondary incidents going on.
You don't, because you don't know. They may have you come in here and somebody's waiting for you to come.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
For school shootings, all schools have reunification sites. You don't publish where those reunification sites are because they start an incident at the school, and then if they know where that site is, they could just respond there and continue to inflict harm. So there's certain things that you don't disclose to the public just for the safety of the public, basically. Contacts here, if there was a specific threat towards us, we would do our best to contact the person here. Usually that's just trying to Google the church and find a contact information for that. Maybe talking with somebody that you know and saying, hey, I need to get somebody, you know, Craig Tuck, I have his phone number. If there was a serious situation that I knew of, I might call him and say, I need to get hold of somebody ASAP, who, you know, can you do that, or can you put me in contact with somebody? And I would come here for that. That's probably the most likely response is if there was a threat directly for this church, you would have police presence here to make sure that threat doesn't happen. But a number to how to contact somebody, like over the phone, I don't know if there is a good way to have that listed. Because you want the general church number listed as your resource for, you know, just the general public for all church situations.
Right.
But maybe if you list an emergency number after that, but then are people gonna call that emergency number thinking, oh geez, nobody will answer during business days. If I call this emergency number, people are gonna answer. So do you really want that published up? I don't know if there's a good answer for
We'll
it.
have to figure something out.
And like you said, the pastor, I know our pastors, when Sunday morning is there, they're preparing for the lesson, their thoughts are on the lesson. They don't like a lot of distractions beforehand so that they can be in the right place to give their message.
And their cell phone's off. They, I mean, they mute it, they, you know, they're not gonna,
Yeah,
while
they have a
while
job
they're
to do.
preaching, you know,
Right.
they're not gonna, oh, hold on, I got something coming in.
Right, so maybe somehow have the head of your security team or somebody listed, but again, do you want the public to have that number and?
no, it would just be on your wall. You stick
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we'll just be answering the phone, maybe.
So how, you know, since everything goes through 911, and where's the dispatch at now, at the sheriff's? in Roscommon?
In the courthouse,
Oh,
up in Roscommon.
Okay,
Yeah.
and they've got Roscommon County Sheriff, they got Denton, they've got you guys
Yep, Garish and Richfield,
in Richfield.
yeah,
But the 5
that's fine,
in this locality?
in this county, yep.
Okay.
And if there's a serious situation like at the school, everybody's gonna be coming to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting started, a bunch of ideas.
The hardest part, what I found is just keeping bodies available to do it. You don't want to burn people out, you don't want to task them all the time with having the same people do it over and over again. But for a while, I was finding I was that person who was doing it over and over again. So even if you have main people who do it, a list of alternates, if somebody's gone for the weekend, rather than relying on your main body people, you have an alternate who can step in and fill in for a day or two.
Well, we got 14 people.
We have 14
There's
people that are
14
interested, yeah.
people,
That's not bad, that's
and we
good.
talked about having two.
How many are
but
snowbirds? 4? 4?
At least, yeah, four
What was that,
of them,
Dave?
right?
What?
What was your question?
How many are snowbirds?
Thank you.
No problem.
I think it
Thank
was
you.
Ron and Karen.
Just Ron and Karen?
Yeah.
Ron and Karen.
I mean, Doug and Dawn are gone right now, but
Ron and
this is
Karen.
this is
They
the
may be
first
doing
time.
that more though.
They might be doing it more, but this is the
So,
first year they could, because they recently retired.
We have the opposite, where in summertime, there's people who love to camp and are going all times camping out there, so.
We have a big population in the summer, don't we?
We sure
Wouldn't
do.
you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of people in the summer.
Yeah.
So, but, and then we talked about, you know, having CPR and
Basic first aid.
basic first aid.
Oh, and Stop the Bleed, we've had it up at the
I
club
was
before,
wondering
yeah.
if we needed to
Paramedics will
do
put that on for us.
like a security class, like, you know, how people take security courses or
Mhm.
classes or something.
Like a first aid refresher course?
No, like how to assess a situation and how to, you know, if you've got to pull out a gun or something and there's a crowd and that kind of thing. Aren't security people taught something?
That's pretty much.
I mean, no, a police officer is, but.
We're not really, we're trained to use good judgment and obviously know your surroundings. But since every situation is so fluid, that there's, could be 14 different ways of a situation happening, it's hard to do a realistic scenario
Okay.
for that.
Okay.
So having your people know if the person's standing in front of 10 people, don't be just target focused, see the whole scene.
See, right.
And
See
realize
behind it.
probably
See
shooting
behind
them in
it.
front of 10 other people, you gotta weigh the risk and rewards there, and it might not be the
Exactly.
best option.
Right.
Moving to a different angle and engaging from a different angle that, you know, is safer. Having somebody stationed, even if they're not working on, you know, that day, have them up front and in the corners where they, you know, that way different angles and different avenues are covered.
I think one
We
was
talked
an
about
awareness,
that.
like when you're sitting
Yeah.
there, we get the cameras on the outside door, looking at the parking lot, somebody's looking at that. Some, you know, another person's at the door, you know, the two doors. And, you know, you're just aware of who's coming in. I mean, somebody that's gonna do something is gonna act a little weird.
There should be
It's not gonna look like
signs.
you and me walking in, it's not gonna look like some of the older people walking in. They're gonna be, they show something about them, and you go, what's that person doing? You know?
Well, yeah, I don't know really any of the situations that are like movies where somebody is just calm, cool, and collected when they intend to do harm to
Okay,
others,
yeah.
you know? There should be some body language that they're displaying that
Yeah.
is just off. And having people just notice that, and maybe they're just having a bad day, or maybe they just lost their spouse the night
Right.
before.
Yeah.
But having somebody who can have a conversation with them and maybe help their life go a little better, if they're not intending to do harm,
Right.
you know, could mean the world to them. But noticing that that body language is just different is, you know, could prevent a disaster or could, you know, help somebody in their situation they're going through. So, but it's difficult to, how do you train for a situation like that,
Right.
you know? And if you allow CPLs, the new law states that if you allow CPLs, you have to pretty much allow everybody with a CPL to carry, is one way you could, you know, interpret how that is worded. So do you really want somebody who has a CPL but hasn't fired a gun in 10 years?
No.
Standing up and trying to defend others, but
No.
at the same time, can you prevent it? So it's a challenging thing
It
when you
is
get into
very
the what ifs of life.
Yeah.
I don't think you can ever think about all the what ifs of life.
Right.
All you can do is just prepare to know what you're gonna do if this situation happens.
So, you wanna?
Yeah, so what is this? Is this room?
So this is
Just a
this
kind
is
of-
our